Blog Talk Radio.
Boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to the second edition of the Sports Cycle with your host, Vic Michaels. Of course, I am Vic Michaels, and tonight we have an action-packed show for all you guys. But before we jump into it, I got a very, very special announcement for all the fans listening out there. Not only will the Sports Cycle be broadcasting live from blogtalkradio.com, a new deal has been done. We will also be moving to puckrent.com. So a very, very special announcement there. The Sports Cycle, along with Bradcast Sports, of course, the show you know me and Brad Bartko do, both shows will be simulcasting live on puckrent.com. So a lot of big stuff in the works, not only for this show, but Bradcast Sports as well. And it's going to be a great time. But enough about me. Let's get to our guests tonight. We got two very special guests tonight, two beauties, two studs. First of all, I'd like to announce the hometown hero. Not only can this guy pound back the beers, but he can pound back the insults on the Oilers. This is John Bachansky. How are you doing this evening, John?
I'm doing good, man. How about yourself? I could never tire of pounding on the Oilers.
I'm not. How can you not, especially with that game last night? Second tonight from Boston, Massachusetts. You know him well. We've had him on plenty of times before on Bradcast Sports. All-around great guy. You may know him from the Oilers Rig. He's the host of Oilers Rig Radio, Mr. Alex Thomas. Alex, how are you doing this evening?
I can't complain too much. Had a decent sports today with the 5th AFC East title for the Patriots in a row, so can't complain too much about that. But I'm sure we're going to have a little bit to talk about with the Oilers tonight because things aren't so rosy right now, are they?
No, exactly. I think the weather out here in Edmonton right now perfectly reflects this Edmonton Oilers season. It's cold, it's miserable, and it just plain sucks. It's not fun to be outside, just like it's not fun to watch Edmonton Oilers hockey games. So, gentlemen, let's get right into it here. The first topic I have on tap here tonight, of course, is the Edmonton Oilers and that 6-0 shellacking that I'm sure we all witnessed last night to the hands of the St. Louis Blues. Chris Stewart played a big part in that game, really laying it to the Edmonton Oilers. And Ilya Bryzgalov really could do nothing. He could do nothing right in net. I'm going to take a quote from Mr. Dallas Eakins. I'm pinning this loss on the boneheaded mistakes we make when we have everything going in our favor. Now, I don't know what was going in their favor in the first place, but he is right. A lot of boneheaded mistakes. And the Edmonton Oilers do enjoy misery. So we'll start with you, Alex. What were your thoughts on last night's game? And really, where did they go wrong? Was the whole game just a bad from the beginning?
Well, they had a decent first period. I thought that. I mean, they outplayed the Blues just about in every possible way in that first period. And the one legitimate shot or chance, that the Blues got on net went in off a stupid boneheaded mistake, which is what Aikens is referring to. It was a bad call to have Ference in the power play. He totally missed his shot. Bryzgalov can't come out of the net. Ference misplays his defensive read. Belov's on the ground, has no idea what he's doing. It was just a mess on that play. But outside of that, they played a really good first period. But that play broke them. And you could tell from that point on that they really weren't the same team. When the Blues went up 2-0 late in the second period, it was game, set, match. I thought they did a lot of good things last night. But overall, they couldn't convert, and it shows that they're just not a good hockey team, and there's really no other way to put it. They're just not a good team right now.
Yeah, obviously a collapse in the last 40 minutes of that game. John, what can you share? Give your thoughts on your opinions of last night's game.
Well, when you outshoot the St. Louis Blues 14-5 in the first period, that is a good start. The St. Louis Blues outshoot every team by a wide margin whenever they play. But the problem with the Oilers is they can only play for about 10 or 15 minutes of the whole game. the other time they forget how to play hockey, and then the goaltending is just nowhere to save them.
I don't know if you guys saw the clip of Dallas Eakins in practice earlier in the day, but of course it's been fairly shown around Edmonton here of him throwing the pen during practice, just really showing frustration. And I'm not sure if he's not getting through the players. Maybe they're not listening to him. But obviously the record shows that Dallas Eakins is not having a great time here in Edmonton. Alex, what can Dallas Eakins do in this situation? There's really not a lot to do when your team's playing so poorly. But if you were in his shoes, maybe what could you do to get these guys rallied up and maybe light a fire underneath their butts?
Nothing. He can't do really a thing right now. I mean, when you're, the fourth coach in 5 years, you're trying to implement the system. It's obviously going to take time. That was mistake number one. That's not on Eakins. That's on the team. I mean, you can't bring in your fourth coach in 5 years and expect results right away. You might be able to argue that this team should have stuck with Ralph Kruger. I would argue that this team should have stuck with Tom Rennie following Tom's second season in 2010-11, where it was quite clear the Oilers were starting to make some improvements. Dallas Eakins is a good coach. He's a smart coach. He's a young coach. But there's really not much he can do. I mean, this is a roster that's lacking a competent number one NHL defender. It's actually, in my mind, lacking competent top pairing defenders. There's too much of the same mix. There's too many guys trying to do everything. Right now it's a mix of players. I mean, you can't win with this mix of guys. There needs to be more NHL players. There's too many AHL guys in this lineup right now. I mean, there's not much you can do. I mean, you can only get a team so fired up. Eventually it's going to have to come down to execution. This team's clearly struggling in that regard. You saw it last night. I mean, you can't coach a team to not panic. I mean, when they played to the game plan last night, they dominated the Blues. They got down after a bad break. They panicked. There's not much Eakins can do about that. There needs to be more of a calming presence in that locker room. I really don't know what he can do to do that. I think that falls on the shoulders of Craig MacTavish more than anybody.
Yeah, I agree. I think the problems with the Edmonton Oilers go way above Dallas Eakins right now. But, John, does that mean that Dallas Eakins isn't the right man for the job? Does Dallas Eakins deserve to stay here in Edmonton? Of course, a lot of people still calling for his head, which sounds fairly outlandish with the amount of coaches they've been through in the past few years. But still, is Dallas Eakins a good fit here in Edmonton?
I think so. He preaches that he's a good fit, and the things he preaches would make him a good fit if a hard work or just doing the right things all the time. But they're never prepared to do all the hard work, and he seems distant on the bench. He seems like he'd rather just watch the game than motivate his team. And when you look at things like Sutter on LA Kings, he's always, if he sees something wrong, he's always talking with his team. And you never see that with Eakins. You always see him back on the bench and just staring and watching the game or shaking his head. Well, he has lots of time to shake his head when we're making so many mistakes.
Yeah, you never know. Maybe he's just looking at a very pretty girl in the crowd. We really don't know right now because those you get a pretty good view from those coaching benches, and I must say there's a lot of beauties in those crowd at those Oilers games. But anyways, moving ahead, I want to stick kind of close to this topic of Dallas Eakins, the coaching staff, and a little higher up, and that is the Old Boys Club. We've gotten to know these guys very well. Of course, basically every one of them used to play for the Edmonton Oilers. And yes, I'm talking about Kevin Lowe, Craig MacTavish. Of course, you got guys like Scott Housen in there too. On the bench, Kelly Buchberger, Steve Smith, Frederick Chabot. Now, you got guys like Kelly Buchberger. This guy's been an assistant coach since 2008. Steve Smith since 2010. Kevin Lowe has been in the front office since 2000 as a GM, and before that as an assistant coach and head coach with the Edmonton Oilers. Of course, Craig MacTavish was the head coach for a long time, left and now came back. But this Old Boys Club, it's really been implemented for a long time, almost my whole lifetime as an Edmonton Oilers fan. A lot of people don't see this as a good thing. There's really no such thing as change. You can't have change when you have the same people running the show for so long. Alex, what are your thoughts on this whole quote-unquote Old Boys Club that's been going on in Edmonton for quite some time?
Well, you're not going to fire the coach at this point because it doesn't make sense to make another move there. You're not going to fire the GM either. Craig MacTavish's job is safe, as it should be right now. This is a guy that's been on the job for 6 months. I know a lot of people will say, well, he never really left the organization. Well, let's be honest. This guy's image of what this roster needs to look like is clearly different from Steve Zambolini's. They went out and they get David Perron, they go out and they get Boyd Gordon, they go out and they get Andrew Ferentz. Those are 3 good NHL players. We can argue about contracts and such all day, but these 3 guys are legitimate NHL players that they went out and got. McTavish, for the most part, made good moves this summer, but you can't build a whole roster in one summer. I'm willing to give him more time. That said, Kevin Lowe has to go. I mean, you see the heat is starting to get turned on by the media now. You see Terry Jones' article that came out maybe a half an hour ago about him having to own up with that jersey that was thrown on the ice last night following the 6-0 loss. He's the guy that's got to go. Scott Housen, I'm okay with keeping around. That's the guy McTavish brought in with him. Those 2, I think, can stay, but outside of that, I mean, you can't have assistant coaches that don't see eye to eye with the head coach. I don't think Kelly Buchberger and Steve Smith make sense to be on that coaching staff. And certainly Kevin Lowe, I mean, look, he's been the only constant through these 8 years. Eventually, something's got to give. He's been around for 13 years in management. They've made the playoffs for 3. I'm already considering this year a lost cause. That's a problem. There's nobody in professional sports to get the NHL with that kind of track record that keeps his job for 13 years. The heat's got to be turned on Kevin Lowe because that's just unacceptable.
Well, usually when you bring in a new head coach into your system, would you not think you would want to surround him with people he's comfortable with? Of course, Dallas Eakins, very successful in the AHL. He had his own coaching staff there. But why would the Oilers not let him bring in all of his own guys? Of course, they let him bring in some, but not. They still got guys like Kelly Buchberger and Steve Smith still there. Do you think it's just because there's too much friendship in that organization, John, that maybe the reason Kelly Buchberger is still there is because he's been such a quote-unquote good soldier for the Edmonton Oilers for so long? Do Kelly Buchberger and Steve Smith need to go, John?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, our power play and penalty kill, they showed improvement last year, but they seem to regress. It seems like they can't find a way to improve it above just the bare minimum that you need to do to be good. And I think it's a bit of entitlement. I think they helped the Oilers before, so they feel bad about firing them. But I think it's time you find some specialists and maybe a more experienced assistant coach to help out Eakins, who lacks in this experience department.
John, do you think Daryl Katz is to blame for this situation? Of course, they say that he's fairly close with guys like Kevin Lowe. Do you think Katz maybe should step in? Of course, we all know that when owners tend to take too much control, as we've seen in places like the Dallas Cowboys and Al Davis in Oakland, it's not always a good thing when the owner likes to get his hands in the pot. But in this situation, do you think maybe Daryl Katz can maybe do something about this and maybe stop kissing these guys' asses and maybe try to move forward?
Absolutely, yes. I don't think you can ever blame an owner for your team losing. I'd love that Kate stepped in and put his money towards his team and helped us to spend the money to get the players on the offseason. Obviously, we are not getting those great players yet, but I think we need to do something like Calgary did, where I don't believe Brian Burke is the proper guy, but I think Kevin Lowe needs to go. I think his stay has been too long now. And we need to get someone who knows what they're doing to be the president of hockey operations. And maybe if that guy shows that he knows what he can do, he can eventually replace Craig McTavish as the general manager.
Alex, same question to you. Is there anything Daryl Katz can do, or does he just have too much respect for guys like Kevin Lowe?
I almost wonder if it's maybe he's afraid to fire an idol of his, a guy who he watched growing up. I almost wonder if that's the case. But this is a smart businessman. I mean, he didn't get the amount of money he had to buy this team through luck. He is a smart businessman. He knows what he's doing. But I have to wonder if maybe he's a little starstruck. I don't know if that's the right word. Running this team, running it with guys working for him that he grew up watching on those 80s Oilers teams. I do almost wonder if maybe that's one of the reasons why Kevin Lowe has hung on so long, because I can't think a good business guy like Daryl Katz is going to let one of his companies fall flat on their face multiple times like this hockey club has. But you have to think at some point enough is going to be enough. But I do think some sort of a friendship or a boyhood idol kind of thing is what's keeping Kevin Lowe with his job right now. And I do think the Kelly Buchberger, your point you made earlier about being a good soldier, is part of the point. I mean, we hear a lot of people talk about Steve Smith and Kelly Buchberger because the special teams are so bad. But think about this. I mean, the Oilers haven't been able to develop an NHL defenseman since Charlie Huddy left when he was let go along with Craig McTavish after the 08-09 season. But the Oilers were able to develop Tom Gilbert, who obviously is a controversial player, but he's a good player. He's on the top pairing in Florida. That's a good NHL defenseman. Dennis Grebishko was showing good signs. The Steve Stales had been developed earlier on. Jason Smith had been developed. Lubomir Visnovsky was tremendous here. It had improved from his days in L.A. since coming here. There was an ability that Charlie Huddy had to develop a defenseman. Since Charlie Huddy's left, the Oilers have literally not been able to develop a single useful NHL defenseman outside of Jeff Petrie, who had some effects from the Charlie Huddy days. So to me, it's not as much on the special teams aspect why I'm so harsh on these assistant coaches. They need to be able to develop players. They can't do that right now. And the defensive zone coverage, somebody needs to be able to teach defensive fundamentals, and none of these guys seem to be able to do it.
So sticking with the Oilers, this is a team right now that is 21st in the league for goals. Now, the thing that they've been preaching for so long is all these young players, they're all top-end scorers. They're all skilled guys. They can all put the puck in the net, the Eberles, the Yakupovs, the Halls. This is supposed to be an offensive team. This is supposed to be a team that may let in 5, but they'll end up scoring 6. And yet goals is a problem right now. Being 21st in the league, that is nothing to be proud about. So I guess we can put that to your previous point, Alex, about development. Maybe these guys aren't getting the development that they need. But where are they going wrong? This is a team that's supposed to be one of the best teams in the league for scoring with all these high-end talent players. Where are they going wrong right now, John? What do they need to do to get better at putting the puck in the net?
Well, I think their problem is last year they were able to score more goals, but this year there's been preaching just get shots to the net. That's not a way that you can succeed in scoring, as if you just throw pucks to the net. You got to shoot the score. You got to shoot at the important areas. You got to go for passes off the pads. You can't just throw a puck and have no one driving the net. And I think it's just all the message that just trying to shoot. You got to do the St. Louis Blues. They don't get lots of shots every game, but when they do, they make them count.
Yeah, I think the forecheck is something we can bring to the forefront here. The Edmonton Oilers forecheck, not one of the best in the league. Of course, like you said, don't get a lot of bodies to the net. But then again, other than maybe Ryan Smith, who is going to go to the front of the net, Alex? Of course, you don't have a guy like Dustin Penner anymore. No more big bodies. Is that maybe to blame? Maybe why they're not getting as many pucks by as they should be?
Well, my big issue with them offensively is when you can't score when you're hemmed in your own zone. It starts defensively. Defense is the best form of offense. They don't have an NHL defense. They can't get the puck out of the zone. They barely have any zone time. That's a big problem. You can have all the skill you want, but if you can't get the puck out of your own zone, you don't have a defenseman that can make a crisp pass out of the zone, and you don't have guys that can help you with zone pressure, you're not going to score. But by putting pucks to the net, I think the idea was David Clarkson was going to be the guy standing in front of the net. I think that was the idea. That didn't happen. Hindsight's 20/20. Instead, the Oilers ended up with David Perron, which, let's be honest here. Again, I mentioned hindsight's 20/20. David Perron's a much better get, and has been a much better player this season than David Clarkson has. But I think the guy that's going to be standing in front of the net, right now it's Ryan Smith, but I get a feeling we're going to see somebody added to this roster that's going to fill that spot. I think it's going to come before the end of the season, to be honest.
Speaking of additions, the Edmonton Oilers added a conditional 6th-round pick the other day in exchange for one Linus Ullmark. I guess you could say he's been a controversial player with his time here in Edmonton. I guess really the only thing people know him for mostly is the spinorama that he did in the shootout. But other than that, Linus Ullmark had somewhat of a tumultuous time here in Edmonton. Some would argue that he was never really given an opportunity. But now, hopefully, maybe now that he's gone, maybe he can get that opportunity. Alex, was this simply just a trade to get rid of a body? Because really Linus Ullmark didn't seem to have a future in this Edmonton Oilers organization. And do you like what they did by shipping him off and maybe giving him that opportunity?
Well, I mean, Linus Ullmark did get one opportunity back in 2010-11. He was able to play 51 games with the team. playing in their top six. And to me, at least, he passed with flying colors. I mean, 27 points in 51 games is pretty much the production that Sam Gagner has, and many people fawn over Sam Gagner as a player. Linus Ullmark, offensively, was able to produce that. He had a rough stretch at the start of the 2011-12 season, and that came into the roller coaster where it was in Oklahoma City, and everybody thought this guy's got a bad attitude, this and that. This is a skilled hockey player. Sure, he's not the biggest hockey player, but he's got a chip on his shoulder. He's got a lot of talent. He's got great hands. He's got good speed. Is this going to be a guy that's going to put up 30 goals? No, not at all. Maybe at most in his NHL career, he'll put up 20 in a season, and that's even pushing the limit. But this is a guy who can be a serviceable player. You send him to Buffalo, he's going to get his opportunity. That's a pretty bad hockey team, too, over in Buffalo right now. But for the Oilers, yeah, okay, you get a pick, whatever. But you open up a contract spot for a guy that wasn't in your plans. You get an unhappy farmhand off your hands. It's a win-win for both sides. Everybody gets what they want in this. Buffalo gets a little more scoring. Ullmark gets an honest opportunity, and the Oilers get a contract spot.
So speaking of contract spots, one man who does have a contract right now, Ilya Bryzgalov, at least for the remainder of this season. Of course, not too long ago, the Edmonton Oilers shipped out Ladislav Smid to open up some cap room to bring in a guy like Ilya Bryzgalov. Now he's come in. He's kind of been wishy-washy. Of course, he had the injury there for a little while. Sometimes he's on, sometimes he's off. Of course, last night you can't put it all on Ilya Bryzgalov letting in 6 goals. But, John, is Ilya Bryzgalov the solution here at Edmonton, or is he merely a short-time fix? Will he be here next season if he continues to play, let's say, average? Do you see Ilya Bryzgalov coming back, or maybe do you see the Edmonton Oilers going another route?
Well, if he continues to play, better than last night, but if he's playing like his old self, I don't see him coming back simply because who would want to play with the defense of the Edmonton Oilers? But as a goalie, he played really well with Phoenix, but that's because Phoenix was a defensive team. He moved to Philadelphia, which is more of an offensive team, and he showed that he's just susceptible to letting in the bad goals, Devan Dubnyk. So whereas their styles are completely different, Devan Dubnyk's more a positional goalie, and Bryzgalov's more of a reflex goalie. They both can't help their teams win when they need it, and they both let in the odd bad goal. So I don't see him being a future if he plays well or if he plays good, or even if he plays bad.
Alex, what are your thoughts on Ilya Bryzgalov's short time here in Edmonton? Of course, not a lot to go off so far, but do you like the fit? Do you hate the fit? What are your takes on Bryzgalov coming to Edmonton?
Well, it was quite clear in the summer Devan Dubnyk's not Craig McTavish's guy. I mean, he was going after guys like Corey Schneider, rumors had Sergei Bobrovsky, Mike Smith, pretty much every goalie available the Oilers were linked to. So you knew that Devan Dubnyk wasn't their guy. That's kind of the cue that Dubnyk's not coming back next season, so they're going to have to find one other goalie. To me, I think Bryzgalov is a good fit here. He's a decent veteran goalie. Yeah, he had a tough night last night, but overall he's played pretty good for this team. He's given them a chance to win in just about every game he's been in so far. I do think he's going to be back. I don't think he's going to be the starter next year. I'm hedging my money that it's going to be Jonas Hiller who's coming into Edmonton as a free agent this summer. But I do think Bryzgalov will be back on a one-year deal, regardless of how he plays. I think this is a Craig McTavish guy, and I do think he will be back next season.
Let's move from talking about a goalie like Bryzgalov, who's having a somewhat tough start here in Edmonton, to a guy who's having a great start in Los Angeles, Mr. Martin Jones, 8-0. He's only allowed 8 goals in the 8 games that he's played. Alex, do we have a goalie controversy here in L.A.? Of course, Jonathan Quick has been injured since November 12th. When he gets back, will there be a controversy, or will Jonathan Quick be back in his rightful place as the starting goaltender of the Los Angeles Kings?
Oh, no, there's no controversy in Los Angeles. I mean, Jonathan Quick is all-world elite, won this team a Stanley Cup in 2012, was absolutely tremendous last year. If he's healthy in time, he's going to be starting for the U.S. In Sochi. There's a lot of hopes down here that this is going to be a guy that's going to lead the United States to gold. This is a guy who will be back starting. But I do think Martin Jones might have forced the Kings' hand with Ben Scrivens. I could see him getting traded by the deadline. Look, Martin Jones has played tremendous, but I think a lot of people are focusing in on Martin Jones, the goalie. But how about that team? I mean, they suffocate you. I mean, this is more of a case in my mind of the Los Angeles Kings. I mean, you've got 3 goalies right now that are playing at all-star levels. To me, that signifies how good of a system Daryl Sutter's running there, and how good of a defensive group the Los Angeles Kings have. But all the credit where it's due to Martin Jones, because he's had a tremendous start to his NHL career.
Yeah, exactly. If that doesn't put you on the radar of every NHL team in the league, I don't know what does. So, guys, moving to the final segment of the show, the great debate, where we will crown our master debater this evening. Of course, a very coveted title. It's worse than a PS4 on a Black Friday. Trust me, people kill to get the title master debater here on the Sports Cycle. So, guys, basically how we're going to do is we're going to do 3 rounds, 1 simple question. We'll get each one of your take or your answer on that question, and we will crown our master debater at the end of the show. So first question here, we'll stick with goalies, something we've been on for quite a while tonight, and the abundance of goalies out there. So if you are the Edmonton Oilers in the offseason, say Ilya Bryzgalov is not your guy, Devan Dubnyk is not your guy, if you can go out and get one goaltender, whether it's free agency, trade, which goaltender would you go after? Of course, Anaheim, abundance of goaltenders. Like you said, L.A., there's a bunch too. Ryan Miller's name's out there as well. Alex, what goaltender would you go out and get if you were Craig MacTavish in this offseason?
Are we talking realistic options or anything?
We're talking your personal options. If we're talking money's no issue. It depends who are the Oilers sending out. It doesn't matter who. Just who do you want in net for the Edmonton Oilers?
Well, ideally, I'd throw a boatload of money, a blank check, the naming rights to the new arena, and a few other things to free agent Ryan Miller. I don't think Ryan Miller is going to be a realistic target. Realistically, like I said, I think it's going to be Jonas Hiller who's going to be the guy. My main target would have to be Ryan Miller. I mean, this is an all-world goalie. He's been stuck in a bad position in Buffalo on a bad team. But you get to watch the Sabres a few times. I've had the opportunity to do so this season. He's kept them in games. I mean, yeah, they've lost these games. He has a lot of losses, but he's kept them in games. They're losing games 2-1 solely because of Ryan Miller. They should be losing 5-1. That's the ideal guy for me.
John, same question to you. Of course, money's not an option. You can trade away the whole team if you want. What goaltender do you want to see in the Edmonton Oilers net next season?
I'd have to agree. Yeah, Ryan Miller's playing unbelievable for the Buffalo Sabres. He's their goals against is halfway in the league, whereas their goals for is at the very bottom. So I disagree with Hiller. I don't see him as a goalie that can save a team a hockey game. I see that he has many holes in his game, and I think it's masked by how good of a team the Anaheim Ducks are. I still believe in Devan Dubnyk. I think if this team can improve on their defense, I believe he's a goalie that has the building blocks of a NHL starter with his big body, and I don't see other options really for this year. There's not many goalies that are going to save this team, especially for a restricted or unrestricted free agent.
So, John, what you're telling me is if Devan Dubnyk had a good team in front of him, you're telling me Devan Dubnyk could be a solid number one goalie?
Yes, I do believe so. I watched the game in Colorado. He stood on his head, made 17 saves in the first period. He's got the ability. He needs to stop giving up those bad goals. He needs to stop getting overconfident, and he needs to just use that body and move it a lot more. He tries to just stay still when most goalies can't stay still. There's too much net available.
Alex, I just want to get your thoughts for maybe a chance for a rebuttal here. You agree, disagree that Devan Dubnyk could be a number one goalie in the NHL?
I think any goalie is going to look bad playing on this current Oilers team. I mean, look, I was a big supporter of Devan Dubnyk in the summer. This defense definitely has left him out to dry quite a bit. But looking at what Devan Dubnyk was at the start of the year, as much as that was defense, he was letting in some goals that NHL goalies just can't let in. He's shown a couple of seasons that he has the ability to be an NHL number one, but only when he's being pushed, only when he feels that the job is threatened. So I don't know if he can ever be a legitimate number one, but I think he can be a good 1A, 1B kind of goalie, kind of like the scenario Toronto has with Reimer and Bernier. I think Devan Dubnyk would thrive in that kind of environment. But if you're going with the Dubnyk-LaBarbera kind of thing, Devan Dubnyk just doesn't play well when he's not being pushed. I don't know what it is. His play's literally the 360s and balls come in. So I think he can be a starter, but he can't be a unquestioned starter. He's got to be a 1A, 1B kind of guy.
All right, moving on to the second question here. Once again, we will stick with goaltenders, and I guess a debatable topic right now. Who will be the goaltender come the 2014 Sochi Olympics for Team Canada? Of course, a lot of names are in the hat right now. John, right now, who is your favorite to be the starting netminder for Team Canada come 2014 Sochi Olympics?
It's an easy decision for me. Right now, it's Carey Price. The guy's playing phenomenal in Montreal, and he's making that team look even better than it is. I know lots of rumors are that Luongo is going to be the starter based on experience, but his numbers aren't as great, and I think he's got a better defensive team than Montreal does.
Same question to you, Alex. Who is your number one goalie for Team Canada? Who would you like to see between the pipes?
Well, who would I like to see between the pipes might not be who Canada would want to see between the pipes, being an American, going to be rooting for the U.S. in the Olympics. But if I'm picking a legitimate goaltender for Canada, it's got to be Cam Ward. I mean, he's arguably, I know he's injured right now, but fully healthy Cam Ward to me is the best Canadian goalie going right now. Carey Price is an excellent goaltender, but far too often Carey Price is a guy who's going to have meltdowns. We saw it in the playoffs last year. Being out here in Boston, I've seen many times Carey Price have meltdowns against the Boston Bruins. He does have meltdowns from time to time, and that is a big issue. But Cam Ward is a rock when he is healthy. He is one of the, in my mind at least, the best goaltenders in the NHL. He's one of the most underrated guys in the National Hockey League. His numbers suggest that as well. And this is a guy where if you put him on Team Canada, I think he would absolutely thrive. For me, it's a two-horse race. It's either him or Roberto Luongo due to what he did in 2010.
A very interesting choice. Cam Ward, of course, I think he's probably the dark horse in that list. Not a lot of people have him at the very top. And, yeah, like you said, I tend to forget that you're in the States, Alex. No wonder you have such a love for Ryan Miller. I was kind of thinking about that earlier, but now I understand because Ryan Miller was a beast in the 2010 Olympics for you guys. So obviously I could see where the attachment comes from there. So, but yeah, being up here. Go ahead.
I thought he was going to steal it for us.
Yeah, I think that he was the guy that was going to be the MVP of that tournament if the United States came out on top. Moving ahead, one more question here for you guys, and to do with the upcoming draft. And we're going to do a little Oilers tie-in here because just how bad they are, who knows, it might happen. If the Edmonton Oilers do fall to last in the NHL, maybe if they don't, maybe they just win the lottery and they get that first overall pick again. Again, yes, it pains me to say that. I'm sick and tired of saying draft and Oilers and first pick in the same sentence. But if it does happen, Alex, who do the Edmonton Oilers take with the number one pick if they do indeed keep that pick?
Nobody. They trade the draft choice. At this point, another 19-year-old, 18-year-old is not what this team needs. You can draft Aaron Ekblad, but realistically, how good is this guy going to be in his first year? The patience has run out. You can't go 9 years without a playoff appearance because, quite frankly, people are just not going to put up with that. If you guys think it's bad now, wait till if they miss next season. It's going to be toxic. Aaron Ekblad, realistically, is not going to do much for them next year. They don't need another small-skilled forward like Reinhart. Realistically, the only option I see is for them to trade the pick. I don't know what's coming back. I would assume it's a defenseman, but you've got to trade that draft choice.
John, same question to you. Do the Edmonton Oilers take a Sam Reinhart, an Ekblad, or do they trade the pick? What do you do if the Oilers end up with that pick?
Yeah, I would trade the pick too, but only if you can get a defenseman who's either going to be a 3-4 defenseman now or a 1-2 possibly in the future. I wouldn't. Other than that, there's no point in trading it if you can't get something to directly address this team's needs. Whereas I look at Aaron Ekblad, and he looks like he possibly is ready to step up his first year. Like he's a big guy, 6'4", 213 pounds. Like it looks like he's already close to filling out in body shape. And I think if you can't get anything good through a trade, then Aaron Ekblad's the way to go. We have way too many skilled small forwards. We don't need another one.
You guys, you're really not making it easy on me with these answers. So similar, both very good answers. So once again, like last week, we're going to go to sudden death. Winner take all on the very last question here. The winner will be crowned the master debater of the evening on this beautiful snowy day here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. So, gentlemen, here we go. This is the question for you. Whoever answers correctly first will win the title of master debater here on the show. So if I could get a drum roll, please. Wait, I got no drums. So here we go, guys. The question to you is, how old is Ryan Smith?
37?
38.
37. 37. John Bachansky pulls it out of his rear end in the final minutes. Game 7, Stanley Cup Final. John Bachansky, the puck hits him off the shin pad, goes in the net. So tonight, ladies and gentlemen, your master debater of the evening, Mr. John Bachansky. Although we cannot take anything away from Mr. Alex Thomas, you're always amazing every time, whether it's this show, Broadcast Sports. I just want to thank you for coming on the show tonight. Obviously, a big thing coming up in the States is Michigan Stadium, Detroit-Toronto, the outdoor game. Are you looking forward to that game?
Oh, absolutely. That's going to be a great event. It's even more looked at here because the United States is unveiling their Olympic men's ice hockey team after the game on the ice. So it's going to be an even bigger event because of that. But there's something about the Winter Classic. I'm not huge on the games in Los Angeles and New York or Chicago. I mean, I don't think there's a need for that. But this is the one I'm looking forward to.
Perfect. All right, guys, just before we wrap up the show here, John, of course, you won. I will give you the floor right now. Any plugs, any last opinions, any last things you want to say before we go off air?
I got nothing. I really hope the Oilers can turn it around. I hope it's not going to be a failed rebuild because Lord knows I don't need more of the stress watching this team.
Yeah, I'm there with you. Alex, same thing to you. Any last plugs? Where can we find you at? What you got upcoming? And what do you have to say for all the fans?
We're on the yoursthrink.com. You can check everything out there. We've got a cool little holiday thing coming up in the next couple of days, either coming up on Christmas Eve or maybe Christmas Day, one or the other. We'll have that out. You definitely want to check that out. But my one thing is it's going to get worse before it gets better. It's always darkest before dawn. So the hope is that this is the rough stretch that sets the pace for hopefully what is the turnaround for this rebuild.
What better way to end the show, folks, Mr. Alex Thomas, pulling out a quote from The Dark Knight. It does not get any better than that. So guys, I'd like to thank both of you for coming on the show. The Sports Cycle, the second episode, you can catch that at puckrant.com. You guys have been awesome. Hopefully we will do this again one time in the near future. But thank you guys for coming on, and you guys have a Merry Christmas.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you too, Vic.
All right, guys,
Thanks,
this has been The Sports Cycle with Vic Michaels. Great episode tonight. We will catch you again next week with two even more gorgeous guests. Yes, you didn't think it was possible, but yes, I have found two male models from Norway, and they will be coming on the show. So get ready for that, guys. No, we don't do any happy holidays, no season's greetings. It's Merry Christmas and good night.